Alright, so the Saber tier list is done. Now we're moving on to Archers. And the Saber one was a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, so I might try to, cut my commentary and reasons down a little bit for this video because I don't want it to be 40 minutes. Ideally, I'd like it to be 25 minutes. But if you don't know what we're doing here, we're going to be ranking all of the Archer servants where they stand, in my opinion, as of right now on the NA version of the game. Now, I do have to specify that this is as of the end of 2023, so if you see a unit that is really good on JP, but not quite as good on, say, Global right now, take someone like Gilgamesh, who just got a very powerful buff at the beginning of 2023 over on the JP version of the game that made him way better than he already was. Not to say that he was bad, but it's a very strong buff for him. If you don't see me really talking about that, or maybe he's a little bit lower than you're expecting, that's probably why, because I'm looking at the very end of 2023, because I like to update these at the beginning of every year and kind of see where things have shifted, have buffs come along, new servants, how do they stack, have certain people gotten worse because of the content coming out. I just think it's very interesting. But as always, I will provide the tier list in the description, and I will add it to the pinned comments probably a couple hours after the video goes live, so you can make your own tier list, right? So you can do your own, go to the Discord, you'll be like, here's my tier list, here's why everybody's wrong, and that's perfectly fine. It's my opinion, you're free to have your own. We all, kind of use the units a little bit differently in FGO. Some people might do more art setups, some people might do more buster setups, so they might think of certain guys fairly fondly. But I do like to think that over the last couple of years, I've gotten better and better at playing FGO, and so I like doing these tier lists to kind of give my opinion on them. So, as always, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and let's just strap in for a really long video over here. Now, first and foremost, we're starting off with some bangers, and I believe these are ordered in order of release so far, so I think this should be kind of nice for that. And there is Emiya, a real rags to riches type story where Emiya was not very good at launch, but this guy is a solid A unit. I almost want to put him in A+. You guys know that I'm a little bit stringy about putting guys in EX tier. I don't like that many people being considered EX tier characters because it's kind of like when everybody's an EX unit, then really nobody's an EX unit, right? I don't think we're really in the state where we have all these bangers, but yeah, I think I'm going to make the A+ here just for Emiya because I think he's just so good. He's got it all. They didn't even need to make him have the ability to change his card type, but they did, and that makes him even better. I mean, the guy can star bomb on his NP. He can loop as an art servant, just do really good damage as a buster, has insane 100% crit damage, has survivability. It's like the guy pretty much has everything you would want, an AoE Archer to have. He's good for CQ content, he's good for farming content. It's just he's really missing a battery, and that's kind of it. And that would probably make him a little too good. Can you imagine if they gave Emiya a 30% battery and even 20% NP damage? The guy would be nuts, right? He's just very strong. Even the Pierce defense, I believe it is, on his NP that he has, because sometimes I forget exactly who has what effect. When you're juggling all these servants when they have their buffs, it get a little distracting, or it can be really hard to remember sometimes. But I believe he has Pierce defense. Even that is very useful, which, I'm talking about Emiya, and Gilgamesh is going to end up right next to Emiya. I think he's a little bit just better than Emiya because of the anti-servant power mod that has this wide overarching reach in the game. I think it's super, super good. Gil is in the same boat. He's just a very strong servant. No survivability is a little sucky. It means if you want to bring him to challenging content, it means that he can get hit kind of hard. But the good thing is that you can either go the Koyan Skya route and just absolutely booty blast the enemy, because again, if you're bringing him to a boss fight, most of those tend to be servants, and he has special power mod against that. There was the old adage in the first year of FGO after he got his NP buff where it was like Gil is an AoE that does single target damage, which is starting to still kind of ring true a little bit. He might not be, a crazy single target in terms of damage, but he does do really good damage, especially after the buff they went ahead and gave him over on JP, and with that power mod against all the servants. I just think he's really got just the bare necessities of what you would want a good servant to have. A good power mod, he's got a good battery, he's got star weight, he's got very high hits on all of his cards. He's just a very solid guy. Like, he's just got a bunch of really good stuff going for him, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with him in the future. Maybe they do something with the second skill buff, and I still think he'll just be very, very solid. Okay, there's Robin Hood. Robin Hood, I still think quite fondly of. I think as a free-to-play option, I think he may be falling off a little bit, in terms of if you want to level him as your go-to, DPS free-to-play unit. But I do think Robin Hood still has a lot of value. The fact that, again, he's one of those servants that has the dodge, and, if you need to level up somebody for cheap, especially at the very beginning of the game, when you have all those missions that give you EXP cards, statues, monuments, everything you would need to kind of get this guy going. And also considering that he's pretty much got a free power mod, as long as the debuff can stick, you know, as long as you land the poison, which the advent of command codes has made that a lot easier. So now not only does the skill potentially get the poison, but you can also get it before you even fire the NP on one of the command cards. He just does very good free damage. Now, is he the most crazy guy around? No, but I think he's still very, very strong. Every now and then, if I want to relive a little bit of nostalgia, I'll bring Robin Hood to some fights, and he still does surprisingly well. So, you know, I'm a very big fan of Robin Hood. I don't really think he's got anything that can really push him up above, you know, B. I don't really consider him being like a B+ unit, but he's just very, very strong. And considering that he's a free-to-play, that definitely adds more points to him, that he's very easily accessible. I think that's a very good point to give him over there. Atalanta is kind of weird to rank because outside of her being a good quick looper, there's really nothing you're going to use for Atalanta. I think I want to just kind of slap her in B for that reason. It's kind of hard for me to debate, you know, between a quick looper and a single target arts unit, who I think is better, but I would probably say that I lean more on, say, oh, you probably want to go for Robin Hood, because if you don't have Scotty, you really don't have a huge use for Atalanta, as she really does just exist to be a really good quick farmer. Although the problem is that her damage can be a little bad at NP1, as for these tier lists, I do consider the free plays at NP5, because you're pretty much guaranteed to get them in NP5, whether it's an event servant that you get to farm them for free, or it's like a friend point gacha unit that you can, you know, get over the course of summoning on other banners or summoning on the friend point gacha. You're not really guaranteed to ever get, say, one copy of Atalanta, much less numerous copies of her. And at NP1, she kind of can't have the problem for damage. But if you need a quick looper, or you just want to use a cat girl waifu, I guess she'll kind of suffice, but she's not really doing anything super crazy. I'm kind of tempted to bump her down to C+, but I do think, as far as quick loopers go, she'll get the job done for you, and I think that's a little bit commendable. Now, I think a rung above Robin Hood under here is going to be Euryale. I really want to push her into A tier, but that might be my own bias, because I've actually slightly invested in grailing into Euryale over on JP. She's now level 80 for me, because just the combo of what she's able to do of stealing charge, giving herself a battery, a solid, decent 3-turn arts buff, and an anti-man power mod, that's all fine and dandy. That's pretty good. The charm on top of that can be very nice if you want to bring her to go fight, say, a male boss, and you can get the debuff to stick. Again, you have to get by debuff resistance, as it is a debuff, or you have to get around debuff immunity, so that can obviously cause it to fail. But if you do get around that, I think she's very, very solid if you want to bring her to some of those fights. And I think she continues to get better and better as you know, these weird 90++ nodes come out. And as someone who primarily uses arts farming over on JP, that's also something that you kind of can't look past. I mean, I've like undone her NP append skill, because she's just very good as like a strong single target against any kind of man dude. And I think that gives her a little bit more value over someone like Robin Hood. And I think the power mod does tend to be a little bit more useful in my opinion. All right, Arash is very hard, because I really want to put Arash in EX, but Arash is just, he's not like these other units. I think I'm going to stick him in EX just for what you're able to do with this guy and how important he can still be to this day. The fact that you might run into a lottery node and this guy just doing insane damage, 30% battery, you know, you slap him into any like double Castoria team that gives him an additional, you know, 60% NP. You just got to unlock his append skill or give him any starting charge CE, because he's only going to be missing 10%. The guy is still absolutely insane. Are you bringing him to challenge quest or anything? Probably not, unless you want to do the necromancy meme, or you want to like loop his NP with Summer Chloe, who gives guts. If you want to do, which we can't do obviously over here on NA, so that's not really a thing, but it's still kind of funny if you want to be able to do stuff like that, even looking at JP. But the guy is just not really a normal FGO servant, because you look at the damage and everything he's doing, and that's, you know, really good, but it's the fact that he takes himself out and then lets you shuffle in a new party member. It's just super powerful. Like, I just still don't think that, even looking at this list, you know, generally I don't want to have, you know, 2 Buster AoEs on here, because there has to come down to the best Buster AoE on the list. And I don't really consider Arash to be a Buster AoE, if that makes sense, because he's so foreign to the idea of what a lot of these other guys are trying to do. And he does something super unique, especially as a 1-star servant. I think he just deserves to be in the EX tier. I think Arash is still very good to this day. I still get to use him in farming nodes and stuff, so I still think, because of that, very, very strong. Then there's Orion. Okay, hot take maybe, but I think Orion is probably worse than Euryale. I've kind of compared and contrasted the two a few times, but I'm pretty sold on the idea that I just don't like Orion as much. Maybe it's because she just doesn't have the battery, or a lot of her buffs are 1 turn. She just kind of feels like worst Euryale, which was kind of a thing when the Gawain fight came out. It was like, oh, if you're really lucky and you have Orion, you could beat the fight. Or if you just have Euryale, you can trash the fight a little bit easier, being able to, you know, still charm, take away his NP to manage that. You know, you're still doing the really good damage against anti-mail. We just didn't have the arts buff at that point, but she was just still very, very strong. So I don't know. Hot take, I don't think Orion is all that great, but I don't think she's that bad. I kind of just see her as a worst Euryale, which, especially looking at, you know, a free-to-play NP5 versus, you know, an NP1, you're probably going to take the NP5. Although Euryale's NP, I believe the damage scaling is a little bit worse than normal. If I still remember correctly, it's like Medea where the percentages I think are a little bit off. So do also kind of keep that in mind. And then there's David. David I kind of see as kind of a niche free-to-play type of character that you might bring. Being good against giants is nice. I mean, Harp of Healing is always going to be a very nice skill, giving the entire party dodge. I believe it also has the debuff cleanse on it. That can be kind of nice, but it's kind of just that guy that you pull out every now and then because he has a really good niche into a fight. I'm giving him the C+ because at least his niche is kind of good. Giant enemies are somewhat prevalent as bosses, I suppose, so you can get some value out of him, but I'm never really reaching in my, you know, back pocket for, oh, thank goodness I brought out David. Instead, I'm probably just going to bring any other single target archer or berserker, or now that we have pretenders and alter egos, you know, whoever, you know, mind you is really good for the situation. He just doesn't feel all that great. You know, you're probably going to need to give this guy a couple more buffs for him to be good, but he has a niche and I'll kind of acknowledge it. Then we have Nobu. This is probably gonna make some people upset because I really like Nobu, but I just don't really think Nobu is all that great as a free-to-play. Somehow, I mean, she's a free-to-play NP5. She has power mod against divinity and riding people, which is, you know, you figure would be really good because a lot of sabers have riding. So not only is she gonna be super effective, but have the power mod, but that's kind of what she's relegated to doing. It's kind of almost, you know, maybe this will feel a little bit better that David's, you know, whole gimmick is not like all that great. It doesn't really come up, but Nobu's does come up every now and then, I suppose. So I guess I can give her the C+ instead, but it's just, again, very strange. It's like, you're not really going to go for using Nobu. I hardly see anybody, you know, scrambling to pull out their Nobu, even after they gave her the buff, that I don't really see anybody going out there to really try to use, you know, the free-to-play version of Nobu, because she's just, I don't know, her era seems like it's kind of gone. It doesn't really seem like it's her time anymore. I think her peak was realistically the, it's Onigashima with the Ushi-Gozen raid. I think that was her peak, because Raiko was a divine riding person that was a berserker, so she also was super effective. I think that's kind of Nobu's peak, and I haven't really seen anything that I was like, oh, Nobu would be really good for this, let me break her out, aside from the fact that I'll use Nobu because I like her, but I just think she's probably going to need something more. Now, okay, now we have Tesla, and this is probably also going to be a little bit of a hot take as well, but I do think out of all of the AoE Buster guys, I think Tesla's my favorite, and this is before we actually get his most recent buff over here on NA. I just think the guy's packing everything you want. He's got the power of Gil with his power mods that are very, very strong, and then he's got the 50% battery that you would want in someone like Ishtar. He's got very good damage, gives himself the NP damage buff as well to play nice with Oberon. The fact that he's even got stuff like Guts for survivability does make him pretty good if you want to bring him into challenge quests. I just think Tesla is a highly, highly slept on unit, maybe because he's weird. You know, you play London and then you play America and he's just a strange guy. But if you look past him being a little bit of a weirdo, I mean, the guy is pretty solid. I really do like Tesla. And I mean, this is coming from someone who Gilgamesh is my favorite character, right? He's one of the few characters in FGO that I want to NP5. He's probably going to be the next one I do, maybe after Jalter or Draco when she comes out. But it's like, dude, it's coming from like a Gil stand, and I have to acknowledge that even my bias, I don't think propels Gilgamesh, especially where he's at currently, to be above Tesla. Now, JP, maybe there's a little bit more of a debate. Maybe you could kind of debate that with Gilgamesh's first skill getting buffed, but as it is on NA right now, I think Tesla is not only very, very strong, but I think he's super slept on. That kind of... Aside from Arjuna, oh my goodness, do I put Arjuna in C tier? I really just do not see what you would use this guy Arjuna for, because I'm even looking at him versus Nobu, and at least Nobu's got two different power mods that are pretty good. Arjuna, what do you have? He has like a one-turn buff that gives him decent enough damage. Sure, he's pretty much debuff immune the entire time. He does have a somewhat decent battery and refunds NP every turn, and it's like all good, but he just got shafted when him and Karna released, because you look at their NPs, and Karna got the anti-divinity thing and then later got the buster down thing, whereas for some reason, Arjuna is still stuck having the bummy insta-kill mechanic, which is just not really a good thing that you want to have ingrained into your kit. So I just don't really see any areas where you would want to use Arjuna unless you specifically really like Arjuna, which, again, I like Arjuna. I think he's cool in Samurai Remnant. I think he's very cool in Extella Link. I do tend to like him. He's a pretty cool looking guy. You know, he's solid Karno rival. You know, I like my Mahabharata, you know, stories and all that stuff. I like all my guys for that. I think they're super cool. Oh, they're all super cracked and everything. But as far as gameplay is concerned, it just didn't translate very well. Arjuna, my boy, you're still waiting for your buffs to come. All right, then. We got a real stinker. We got Kid Gil. I have no idea where you would ever use Kid Gil. He's just not good. I remember when I finally downloaded the FGO a good couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, I can use Gilgamesh and Kid Gil, and then realized, why would I ever use Kid Gil? He's so bad. And the only reason I just used Kid Gil initially was because I didn't have Archer Gil yet, and I was like, okay, this is kind of my taste of being able to use Gilgamesh before I get the real Gilgamesh, and I have not touched Kid Gil ever since. I've not brought him out for anything, because he's just not good. There's just nothing really notable I could say about him, where at least Arjuna can do some good damage. He's at least, you know, debuff immune for most of the fight. He has sustain, you know, in the NP every single turn. He's got stuff going for him. Kid Gil just doesn't really have anything that I think is very noteworthy. Billy is kind of where I would probably consider close to a Euryale over here, because they both kind of have that tech of being able to be used in harder content, especially because he's got the 50% battery as well. That is very, very powerful. That if you want to use him in some odd farming nodes, you can get a lot of value out of that, as long as, you know, he doesn't have a power mod. So as long as they're not like super absurdly strong, he should be able to take care of them. But then there's also, if you want to bring him to challenge quests, I mean, he's got a dodge. He can do some really good crit damage. His crit damage can start to get very insane, as literally, like, it feels like every effect on this guy is just stacking crit damage. So, I mean, he's in a good spot being a quick crit type servant. So, I mean, he's just very solid. I mean, you've used Billy. You know he's good. You know, dodge, 50% battery, critting all over the place. He's got that value in both being good for 90++ nodes, and then also just being fairly decent into challenge quests. Tristan, I also think, is slept on a little bit. I don't want to put him in B+, because I don't think he's quite got the Billy thing. I mean, sure, I've been a huge proponent of, like, people crying and whining about, but he has the 50% battery and then he NP seals. Brother, just debuff cleanse it, man. We have a Mystic Code for that. Bring a Castoria for the fight if it's really going to be that game determinative that you're not going to be able to get the buff. I mean, he's fine. Like, the 50% battery is very strong. You can get rid of the NP seal. It's not like a modern demerit where it's unremovable, right? It's not like Oberon's third skill where it completely destroys him. But then he's also got the Harp of Healing, and his damage is solid enough as an NP1, you know, like an NP1 gacha servant. If you pull him, he's fine. It's just, you don't really see people talking about Tristan too much, because he is just kind of that. He's just fine. There's nothing really great about him. There's nothing really bad about him. It's just a very solid, strong, run-of-the-mill servant. And the reason I kind of put a little bit more stock into Billy is the fact that he's an NP5, whereas Tristan over here is an NP1, so I put a little bit more into Billy on that. So if you're curious, because they're kind of the same unit, but I'm like, Billy crits a little bit harder, and he's a free NP5, so I kind of give him a little bit more credit on that. Tauda, you just kind of like a David, right? Where you have the demonic power bond, you've got the double dodge, you can increase your max HP, which is really cool. Because I used Tauda a lot when he came out for Camelot, because I thought it was super funny throwing rice bags at people. But he's just got this niche that you're probably never going to break him out for, because if Tauda is your option, your account probably has bigger problems than, you know, trying to concern yourself with Tauda. All right, then we have Squirtoria over here. I might bump up Squirtoria now, because let me just spoil it. Yeah, Chloe's already on the list, so the Squirtoria can't really make it into EX. I just think Squirtoria is not as good as Chloe, you know, hot take. You know, Chloe having the 50% battery, the Omni card buff, being a free NP5, so even after she loses the Omni card buff, she can still do really, really good damage being hard carried by being an NP5. But Squirtoria, you know, I may be a little harder on her than I probably should be, but you know, she's still very, very strong. I think Squirtoria basically being able to loop her NP for free, even if I don't think it does all that much damage, I think it is pretty notable. And the fact that you're looping an NP that is always suppressing the enemy's NP because it's draining their charge every single time, I think is very good, you know. And I think the death by 1,000 cuts thing is probably fine. You know, you're probably going to be A-okay. It's not going to be that big of a deal. So, you know, I'm fine with putting her up in that A+ tier. But I don't... Yeah, no, I'm looking at some other people that'll probably land in A. So, like, yeah, I think that they're probably not as good as Squirtory over here. Like, you know, let me just kind of rub the band-aid off. Kind of show someone like Chiron. I think saying like lands very solidly in A. And this kind of gives me a nice little curve to look at where, you know, I definitely think she's the best. I think she's the second best. And then Chiron, I think, is a very interesting unit with the Earth Power mod being very strong. And then kind of being able to double as a support or also being able to double as your main DPS, kind of like Neobrite, who we talked about yesterday in the Saber tier list video. I think he's very strong in that aspect. I just don't think, as good as I think he is, I don't think enough people are really using him because you probably do have better options out there, especially Chloe being as good as she is just so ridiculous. I don't know how they got away with making Chloe that good when they initially dropped her, but yeah, I don't know. She's just very, very strong, and unfortunately people like Chiron. And I guess if I'm looking at another single target arts unit, Emiya Archer over here, who I also think is very strong, just being able to do really good damage. And I like the way that his buffs are centered, where they're these like 3-time defensive buffs or these 3-time attack buffs that last for 5 turns on like a 5-turn cooldown. So you're really going to get all the usage out of them. You know, I think is very well balanced, so that makes sure that you get the maximum value out of them. And you could even potentially, I believe, stack them sometimes if you can somehow save, say, your attack buffs. You can kind of stack them, especially with using anything like the Atlas Academy Mystic Code, where you can get the skill cooldown, or if you want to be really quirky and bring a Kolyanskaya or a Tamamo for some reason, you know, you want to bring one of them, you can really start getting those skill cooldowns and start looping his skills. And I think he's very strong in that aspect because his NP1 damage is already really high, and then you start stacking his buffs and he'll be looking really strong. But anyway, back to going in order. I was like, this is probably the best way I can kind of explain my thoughts on the single target arts, is just do them all back to back to back. Then we have these guys. I still don't think very highly of them. They're trying to help them out with buffs and everything, and they can do really good low damage or low HP damage, but I just don't think that's a good mechanic for FGO specifically, because you do not want to be fighting at low HP with all the random crits and just, you know, the enemy could just charge their NP randomly, or damage over time stuff like burns, curse, poison. You don't want to be trying to live at 1 HP. You don't want to be trying to do that. It's just not very good for FGO mechanically, which they're trying to help them. You know, people like them and Hijikata, they're trying to give them stuff like guts so they can stay at 1 HP for longer, but it's a fun gimmick that you just have way better options for. Like, I would much rather just bring Tristan, who has the 50% battery in the party utility, or Billy, who's going to crit the enemy into oblivion and also has a 50% battery, than these guys. Then we have Ishtar over here. Now, Ishtar, hot take. This might be the Gilgamesh bias in the propaganda, so don't flame me in the comments. This might actually be the Gilgamesh propaganda, just kind of being in my subconscious, but I don't think I like Ishtar quite as much as I like Gilgamesh, because I know she's really good. 50% battery is nuts. Stacking the 3rd skill for the big attack buff, very good with Kolyanskaya. You know, has the crit damage, bombs the stars on the NP, very good. But look, I think my boy Gilgamesh with the 30% battery is still good enough for buster farming, so functionally they can both do good in those avenues. It's just you're kind of relegated to using Oberon with Gilgamesh, but you were going to use Oberon anyway. And then the fact that he's got the power mod, look, you could stack the attack buff, but the power mod plus the power mods that say like Kolyanskaya and everybody's giving him, and this is also, I'm trying not to use the bias of knowing how good he's going to be on JP, but it's like he's going to get even better, I promise. He's going to become insane giving himself that NP damage buff. And so maybe it is the Gilgamesh propaganda, you know, that has just been infesting my mind for the last couple of years, and I'm perfectly fine if someone in the comments is like, nah, Gilgamesh ain't as good as Ishtar over there, and I'm fine if I get called out for that, but I'm blaming the Gilgamesh propaganda. I think I just have too much of an internal bias, but I can't let it go. I can't let it go because I've used both of them and I like Gilgamesh more. I have more fun using him, even though, you know, Ishtar also has the chance for the invincibility or the pierce invul, but they're just chances, right? They're not guaranteed. It's more frustrating that she has them at 80% chances, because when you need them or you want them, you never get them. It's like nobody ever brings it up because nobody ever gets it. You know, nobody ever sees it. So I'm keeping her in A tier for being frustrating, I guess. And look, you know, look, the player base, the 3rd skill, it's too hard to use. You know, it's too hard to time the skill, which, okay, that's a joke. I don't want someone to be like, ZTL is really dumb. He doesn't know how to, I know how to time the skill, all right? Just making a joke. But moving over to Moriarty. Moriarty, I think, is very, very strong. I think Moriarty is one of the most, like, slept on characters on top of, like, Tesla over here. Guy is packing insanely good things. He's got Pierce Invul. He has the ability to make everybody evil and then double buff them. And then he Pierce Invincibility on top of that, so he's kind of always getting around things. The only thing that I kind of think maybe people have a issue with is that there's no like power mod for current, you know, meta stuff where you want to have, you know, especially an Earth or Man power mod, because a lot of the nodes are starting to have those guys. But even Sky would be really good if we could give him that. I think that's one of them. And I think it's also the whole, oh, you know, you need stars to activate his battery thing. But that's, I mean, we already talked about that with Kukulkan, that it doesn't really matter because Koya and Skya, the main person you want to use with these Buster guys now, or at least bring one of them, drops 20 stars on her second skill. So that is immediately live as soon as you go into the battle. It is perfectly fine. I think he's very, very strong. And I might be convincing myself to put him up into A+, but I don't know if I'm that much of a crazy person. I'm looking at some of these other guys and I'm like, well, I think some of these other guys might be a little bit stronger. Summer Helena, woof, I just leveled her up on JP, and I was really hoping she would be better. But like Kid Gil, I don't know what you want me to do with this servant, man. I know, you know, this is not Lisango's fault. This is when DW is running the game. What do you want me to do with this servant? Remember, you just put out Rider Ishtar as the free-to-play for that event, and that lady was able to, you know, Quick Loop as soon as Quick Loop dropped. You know, she's really good. You guys dropped Maid Alter. You dropped Caster Nero. You dropped banger servants for that. And then somehow we just walk out with Helena. I mean, even Lancer Raiko is still like, what, a CC plus tierish unit? Like, she's still usable in some capacity. Helena is just dog water. Now we have Tomoe, and I really, oh man, I want Tomoe to be really high because I like Tomoe, but Tomoe just doesn't got the stuff, right? She just doesn't have it. She can do some really good damage, I will admit. She's got that, but she's got like the bare essentials where it's like, oh, she has like the Oni charisma where she gives herself the NP damage buff and the attack buff, so her damage can be very good. She's at least got like the max HP buff as well. That can be very nice. She can suck up the stars, you know, as you would want an Archer to do, but she's just missing stuff, and they refuse to buff my girl. Give her something. I don't care what it is, like a battery, an invul, I don't care, man. Invul Pierce on the NP, I don't care. I don't care what it is. Just give her something, please. Tomoe is starving out here, you know. Bring out her husband from Samurai Remnant so we have an excuse to give her a buff, man. Something along those lines, please, man. Because Tomoe, I use her a lot in Challenge Quest runs because I really like her and I have her grailed, but I can always admit that she just doesn't have, not even the X factor that some of these other servants have, but just the necessary buffs in her kit that a lot of these other guys have. So I would just like to see her get something. Maybe she could be a little bit more usable, but a little bit frustrating, Same thing for Santa Altera. I think Santa Altera is kind of past her time, especially now that we have a better kind of support free-to-play Archer over here in Nightingale. I think Nightingale still, even for the raids that we just had for the Korean Sky event, she was a very good plug suit option. Or no, it wasn't. No, she wasn't the plug suit option. It was for the one that stunned you, because I think she could have debuff cleansed one of your guys, or you would debuff cleanse her, then debuff cleanse your main DPS, something along those lines, and then she gave you a ton of buffs. So, like, she gives you NP damage, you drop stars, gives you attack buffs. She's just really good for that. Whereas Altera, you know, sure, you could be like, but she gives me the 20% battery. Bro, you could just bring Asclepius instead. You're probably going to bring him for 20% battery instead if you're looking at free-to-play options. Like, you have better things to be bringing. And, I mean, you have a better free-to-play Archer and Santa Nightingale over here, who I might bump up the B+. I think Santa Nightingale's actually pretty good. I think you can use her in a lot of just different, like, random scenarios. You can use her as the DPS or as the plug suit, or just bring her as a support. You know, you don't have to plug suit her out. Leave her on there if you like to look at if you like to look at Nightingale. You're like, you know what? Put her in that Christmas outfit, banger, you know, throw her in there. Bridge Breaker over here, Fujino. Fujino is really weird for me to rank, because Fujino's got a lot of good stuff going for her kit, but she's also just kind of not super impressive. When I look at Fujino, I think of her as kind of like a Tristan, like a B tier solid gacha like option that you could go for. She's got good stuff going for her. I like that she's got, you know, damage cut, which is very nice. It's something that a lot of supports aren't going to be offering, so it gives you a weird, more rare version of survivability, and her buffs are very solid, but she just doesn't have it that I'm looking for. Like, she just doesn't really have that She just doesn't have it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't word it, but she's just missing something. There's just something that I'm not seeing in her, and giving her the super large power mod on her NP was just, I feel like salt in the wound. You can't give her the Arthur gimmick. It's just setting her up for failure, man. We have Napoleon over here. I kind of just view Napoleon as a bit of like lesser Gilgamesh over here, because they're very similar. They have the 30% battery. They can do very good damage, but Napoleon's damage can drop off a little bit after, I believe it's one of the NP damage buffs that is only 1 turn, so you kind of have to time that correctly. You can obviously loop it if you're buster farming, and that's going to be kind of fine. And the Divinity Power mod is really good, but I say lesser Gilgamesh because even though his neutral damage, I believe, is higher, especially with the NP damage buff up, and especially because Gilgamesh does not have his NP damage buff, I believe neutral, he does win out. But, you know, most free quests, in fact, like every free quest is going to have a servant at the very end. So Gil is ultimately going to win out in my eyes. So I do think he's very good. I think he's very strong, but, you know, I don't think he's quite that high. I don't think he's quite A+ material. Now looking at Summer Jeanne. Summer Jeanne, I don't know if I'm kind of biased on putting her in A tier, but I want her to be in B+, not because she's not a good looper, not because she doesn't have a very good skill set. I'm just more upset with her damage. Like, I don't think her damage is quite up to par, especially at NP1. I'll still use her if I'm able to get her. And, you know, obviously having the strong battery plus something I really love is that she stacks Star Drop on her NP. Like, she gives herself the Merlin buff, where every time she fires her NP, which you can loop very easily, she gives herself more stars. So you can really just turn her into a crit servant, which I really, really do like. I think it's very strong. And then she's obviously kind of got the alignment buff thing going with her charisma, which I think is also kind of nifty. But I think she needs like one more buff before I kind of slap her up there into that A tier. Even though, you know, I've kind of said that, oh, she's like the AoE version of Squirtoria. I just kind of value what Squirtoria does a little bit more going into challenge quests, because even though she's kind of got death by 1,000 cuts, she's also suppressing the enemy and making sure they can't fire their NP. Whereas Archer over here is doing more crits and everything, but that's not very special. Like, providing the crit stars is nice for the arts team, but it's not like the most unique thing. I mean, you could also just bring, you know, like an Estrella or something, or Lady Avalon when she comes out, or 2030. You know, 2030, even from the initial Skahog banners, kind of ruined the whole idea of being a very good star genner, because once you get your grubby little mitts on that, you can just autopilot on genning stars. William Tell. So Tell got a lot better with his buff. I'll just say now, I still think of him as kind of in here. Let me grab Paris as well, because these three kind of feel similar to me, where they're more reliant on getting like a debuff to stick, and if they can get that debuff to stick, they're pretty solid. Although, I don't know. Tell, I don't know if you're quite up here actually before your buff. I think before your buff, you're more of a gimmick than anything, actually. The more I'm thinking about it, really wanting to go into dodge type enemies. So yeah, I think pre-buff, you're actually closer to being a David kind of gimmicky servant. But then once you do get your buff, then I actually think you will rise up to being with kind of the better free-to-play single target. So yeah, no, I kind of just convinced myself out of that. Paris, I just kind of see as a little bit better than Robin Hood over here, but obviously there are 2 stars, so the stats can be a little bit lower, so that might also kind of ruin things for your run, especially like they can't take as many hits, stuff along those lines. But I think they're all fairly relative once they get their buffs. Ashwatthama, I think this guy is pretty slept on. I like Ashwatthama a lot. I think he's very, very strong. The fact that you can stack his quick and buster buff, I think, is very strong. Having the invul with a 30% battery is also strong, and then just stacking defense down and big ol' crits is just good. Like, that's just always going to be a very good thing. The only thing that I think holds him back a little bit is like no real solid power mod, and the fact that you want to stack the defense downs on the enemy does mean that any enemy with high debuff resistance is kind of going to hard stop him from doing a whole lot of damage, because that is where a lot of his ramping damage can come from. But I think he's a little bit slept on. I like Ashwatthama a lot. I think he's very, very good. Osaka Behime Archer, just... she has a taunt. It's kind of cool, I suppose, I guess. But that shows that even in current era, I guess, for year 4, DW is still dropping the ball a lot of the time. I was really excited for Osaka Behime, you know, the summer version, but I just don't really ever find a reason to break her out and use her. She just has very, very bad damage. The taunt is kind of cute, I suppose, but aside from that, there's not really a reason to use her. Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane is a very fun unit. You know how in the last video I was saying that you can't really use a fun unit because fun unit doesn't really normally equal broken or very good? Well, Calamity Jane is one of the exceptions. That she has a whole star gimmick on her 3rd skill that, depending on how many stars you have, depends on what level of Super Saiyan she's going to go. And when you get all the way up to like 40, 50 stars, she's going Super Saiyan God and just annihilating everybody. I also like that she can kind of function as a little bit of a support unit as well. And I just think as far as single target quick servants are concerned, she's got the whole package of really what you're looking for, but not the stronger packages, I suppose, of someone that is going to be like one of your mainstay go-tos. But I do think Calamity Jane can be very good if you want to break her out and use her. Just make sure you provide her stars, but she's a quick unit. Dropping stars is kind of their MO. Super Orion, I think, is kind of nuts. I've used Super Orion a little bit more and more here and there. And this guy, I think, is very, very good. Super insane as a solo unit, but he's one of those solo units that benefits from having supports as well, because one of the things for Super Orion is ideally, once you fire the NP twice, you're pretty much going to destroy everything. And I'm telling you, go use your Super Orion, fire the first NP, you get some strong results. But then if you save all of your like big crit buffs, the big buster buff and all that, for when you have fired the NP twice, you're just a walking catastrophe. This guy's not a grand servant over here. He's a secret beast class servant, all right? Like, he's insane. He's out here dropping, millions on the crits and everything and just eviscerating people. And I think he's just very good. And by the time that Super Orion's buffs are starting to wear out, the enemy's already paced in the ground. And I think he's very strong for that. Sure, does he have any farming utility? No. But look, 90% of the game might be farming, but that 10% when you don't have to farm, you break out Super Orion and he just punches them, right? He just beats them up, right? He obliterates them. And so that peace of mind that really, no matter what comes your way, you're going to obliterate them. I mean, I've even seen people bring this guy up against the Lancers and he just gives them the work, right? The guy is really, really good. He's one of those highly anticipated units that people want to summon for when he comes back around for a reason, and it's so much fun to use as well. He's so fun to just smack people into oblivion. Kind of calming down a little bit over here, we have Sei, who doesn't loop quite as well as Atalanta over here, but she's able to loop, and she kind of has the whole moniker as being the queen of free quest farming. Unfortunately, well, because she has the power mod against, Shadow Servants, which is the thing that she's most known for, but she is rocking triple power mods. And I think because of that, she does deserve to kind of be in the B+ tier. I don't think she's quite up there because her base damage isn't quite up there, and she can kind of struggle a bit when it comes to looping. But as far as, kind of having a whole area of the game that she can dominate really well in terms of like fighting Shadow Servants, and then having, like the manpower mod and everything on top of that, that's very good. She's a very solid servant, just might struggle a little bit when it comes to looping. Then we have Summer Ilia, who I think loops a little bit better than Sei over here, but is pretty much lacking any and all power mods. So it's kind of like, do you need someone to loop a little bit better? Say maybe you're fighting like Assassins, Berserkers who have lower NP gain, or you're going to be fighting some, Sabers so you can get better overkill, or you're going to be fighting Casters and you can get away with using Sei, then maybe you can, use her. I kind of see them as a little interchangeable. Do you want a little bit more farming, or do you want a little bit more damage, because they're getting those power mods and everything. Dude, Nobukatsu. How do I rank Nobukatsu? Dude, I'm gonna make the Nobukatsu tier, and I'm just gonna put it like right here, just Nobukatsu, because this guy is like Arash. He's not a real unit. He's not real. He really only exists to be Merlin for Nobu. But it's not just this Nobu. There's the Summer one, there's the Avenger Nobu, and I'm sure we'll get some other random Nobu for Christmas or whatever have you, a Valentine's Nobu, who knows, right? Gouda seems to be getting servants, all the time. They're in like the double banners and everything, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get some random Nobu, or Mao Nobu becomes one of the best units in the game with the next buff she's sure to get, going into 2024 on JP for the next Gouda event. But he's just not real. Nobukatsu's not a real servant, right? He's not real. He just exists to, work for Nobu. So I don't know how to properly rank him because of that. Sith, I think, is a very solid single target quick unit. I'm noticing we have a pretty nice curve over here for B+, which probably means you could probably shape this around a little bit differently. You could probably like merge some of these guys down into a lower tier and then make this just like B and then make this just A in general, something along those lines. But I think she's very solid. Having the, the 60% battery that's split between two different skills, then pretty much being a debuff servant does limit her a little bit in the fact that if you're fighting an enemy that can't be debuffed or has high debuff resistance, she can kind of get flubed on, but I still think she's very solid. I think she brings a lot to the table when you're going into challenge quests, and I think she brings a lot of utility for the party, which is kind of needed as a quick servant because Ruler Scotty and Caster Scotty are not doing a whole lot to keep the team alive, and they're not really providing a lot of utility for everybody. It's pretty much just for the DPS to win in 3 turns. Summer Anastasia. See, it really hurts me to put like Anastasia and Zenobia like only in B tier, because I think they're very strong, but I can acknowledge that Zenobia does literally no damage. And if you want to bring her to CQs, I mean, you're going to be doing death by 1,000 cuts, especially because she's an AoE. But she's got everything you would kind of want her to have. You know, she has like the offensive buffs, I guess, that give her okay damage. She has the guts, she can bomb stars. I think all that is very good, and you can use her as a looper, but you know, her looping is not super great. You know, you're really relying on the NP over time skill, because she doesn't have her own battery. She gets NP every single turn on one of her skills, and it could be a little bit rough. Let me tell you, as someone who used Zenobia, and I went out of my way to use her as much as I could on JP, but I can definitely acknowledge that she is not the man for the job. She is definitely not the guy for those jobs, but she's really good into challenge quests. I do like her there. Same thing for Anastasia. I think Anastasia's got a very solid, strong kit, and you know, rocking the 50% battery. Her damage is also just kind of low, kind of where I see Zenobia as well. In fact, a funny story, when Anastasia's details were first leaked, I thought she was an AoE servant. I thought she was going to be like the best AoE unit in the game, but they're like, no. That's not 30k on an AoE. That's 30k on a single target. I was like, oh, okay. So it's a bit more normal. I like the idea that she and the Summer Corday play very well with each other with their kits, but overall, it's just, you know, she's like a very like strong kind of option if you want to bring somebody to a CQ, kind of like a more fun type of thing, but not insanely OP, you know, not like insanely broken, which is fine. Not every servant has to be broken, but she just seems to be lacking things here and there, which again, I would go into more detail. I hate to say that, oh, this servant is lacking in things, or this servant, I wish they had more, but you know, I don't want to have this video be like an hour long. I think we're already at like what the 40-minute mark, which I did not want to get to. I wanted this to be 25 minutes, but I inevitably started rambling on some of the servants and talking about stuff that I want them to have. So I'm trying to cut myself off here and not say like, oh, okay, well, this is what I would like them to get. But yeah, this is generally what I'm content with looking at. I do kind of like where this list is at right now. There might be some that I would maybe shift around, you know, a tier or two around, like Ishtar might go up to A+. I could see an argument for like bumping up Moriarty to A+. I can see some of these guys going up into A as well. Like I could see maybe Jeanne Archer going up into A if Zenobia is right here, and I think that she probably is like a whole tier above her, which I actually might do, considering that this is our other AoE Archer over here. I definitely think in that avenue, she does a very good job in, well, that job. But I could see some of these other guys moving around, which I will let you guys make your own tier list, you know, again, in the description, in the top comment, in the, you know, comments down below, obviously. I'd like to see what you guys are able to cook up. You know, go to the Discord, make your own little tier list, or drop a comment down below and let me know why you're like, nah, you know what, ZTL, you're a big, dumb, flubin idiot. You know, I don't think this tier list was good at all. But, you know, that's why I make them. I like sparking discussions. I like reading what you guys have to say. And, you know, some people are like, no, this was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Some people are like, well, you know, that's all right. I can see where you're coming from. I don't agree, but, you know, maybe we shift some of these around. But, you know, I like having the FGO discussions. And if no one else is going to talk about FGO, I'll make discussions for myself. You know, I'll make my own fun. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Make sure, you know, like, subscribe, all that good jazz. Peace.